Welcome to Fear and Greed Sunday Feature. I'm Michael Thompson. Last week, we aired an interview from the middle of 2021 with Daniel Petre AO, a tech guru and philanthropist, about the need for an overhaul to philanthropy in Australia. But at the same time, we also recorded a second chat with him, which is just as fascinating because he's the co-founder of venture capital fund AirTree Ventures, which was one of the early investors in Canva. This chat is all about that business, the venture capital side, about what he looks for in an investment, the startup scene, and the importance of the founder in assessing if an idea has what it takes to be a success. It is a great interview by Sean Aylmer from July of 2021. I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. You might remember recently we spoke to Daniel Petre AO, co-founder and chair of venture capital firm AirTree Ventures, about the need to overhaul the way we do philanthropy in Australia. But I wanted to speak to Daniel today about AirTree Ventures and about the startup culture in Australia. It's an exciting time to be involved in startups, and AirTree has partnered with some incredible innovators, companies like Canva and Prosper. Daniel Petre, welcome back to Fear and Greed.
Thanks, Sean. Glad to be here again.
How would you rate the level of innovation in Australian startups over the past couple of years?
I would say that Australian startups, that ecosystem, has gone from being nascent, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago to being world-class now. There's no question that we are now producing regularly best-in-class global companies that are scaling fast, have best-in-class offers, best-in-class financials. We are batting at least as good as we could have ever hoped when you looked at this from 5 or 6 years ago.
Now, Atlassian is a great example of that,
Sure.
but one that you've been involved with, Canva. How did you get involved with Canva? Because that's been an incredibly successful company.
Yeah, look, I think you'd have to say that Canva is the standout performer in the Australian startup ecosystem over the last 6 or 8 years, and probably will be for the next 5 to 10, to be quite honest. It is a genuine unicorn in the sense of unique company.
Yeah.
We were very, very lucky to meet Melanie and Cliff and Cam about 6 years ago. We led the $75 million round that we had a pre-money of 75, which was we weren't around when the 2 rounds prior had been raised, so we wouldn't have had opportunity to invest. The Blackbird did, and Blackbird's been a very incredible, strong supporter of Canva, probably the greatest supporter of Canva going over all their rounds. But we met Melanie, as I said, and I remember the first presentation, she came and she spoke to myself and Paul Bennett, who was working with us then. And you just knew within 10 minutes of her speaking that you were in the presence of someone who was incredibly bright, incredibly capable. It is no surprise to anyone how successful Melanie and Cliff have been. And just listening to Melanie present her vision. And at that time, they had no revenue, but they had incredible stickiness with their product with users, that people were using it and coming back and using it more and more and more. So when you look at a company and you look at the love a customer has for a product, you couldn't have found a better example than Canva. So we were very fortunate to lead that round and have invested in every round since then.
So it's design software. Canva is where that all started.
Yes.
Was it the product or was it the managers that grabbed you, or do you need both?
I think, look, you'll listen to different people on this. I think the best combination, the thing you're searching for as a venture capitalist, is an outstanding founder with a really good idea. And Melanie obviously had domain experience from her time doing design teaching in Western Australia. So she had domain experience, but she had a very, very clear vision of how she wanted to create cloud-based design tools for the masses that didn't require you to be a designer to use. And that was the difference. If you look at what was on offer in those days from Adobe and others, you really had to be someone with some form of design skills to use it. And with Canva, you don't. Yes, designers do use it, but normal humans use it even more. And so she had that vision then. And so hers was an example of founder with domain experience, deep domain experience in design and design tools, a very clear vision of how she was going to build the company and how she was going to build the product. And so it was a perfect combination of those two things, founder and idea.
How many of these sorts of they are startups, but potential investing companies do you see?
Yeah, and look, I think we have to celebrate Canva because it is just one of the great stories of our time, of my lifetime probably. Yeah. But there are so many other success stories that get lost in translation. We see about 15 to 20 companies a week.
Wow.
And we probably invest about 20 companies a year, first checks. And a lot of our success stories are companies that, In the first fund, we invested at a $4 million valuation, and now they're worth 120 or 150 or 200. And they might get sold for, on the founder's discretion, but they might get sold or IPO at 200 or 300. And they may not make the press, but that's an outstanding result for the founder.
Yeah, incredible return.
Yes, there's lots of those. There's lots of sort of started sub $10 million valuation, worked really hard, and had some sort of outcome for them, partial sell down or sell down some 6-8 years later. And there are lots of them. And I think now if you looked at the major portfolios across the bigger firms, so Square Peg, Blackbird and us, each of us have probably got about 60 or 70 companies in our portfolio. So there's a bit of overlap. So there's probably 180 companies across all three. And of those, I would say probably 100, 140 are companies that are, if they're not worth 100 million today, are on a path to that plus a hell of a lot more. There are tons of unicorns in there in the sense of, billion-dollar companies. So it's a great example now. And I think the other thing that's wonderful is we're now seeing what I saw that happened in Seattle. Now, when I worked in Seattle with Microsoft back in the 90s, I was a vice president on campus, you'd see a Microsoft person, engineer, product manager, leave after vesting 6-7 years and go and do a startup. And so there were 15,000 startups that came out of the Microsoft sort of technology ecosystem in the Seattle area. You're now seeing in Australia engineers, people, product managers leaving Atlassian and companies like that, not for any ill will, but just want to do their own thing. And they're taking their few $1 million of vested equity and they're starting their own company with funding for people like us or Square Peg or Blackbird. And so magnificent sort of now, they're returning their effort into the ecosystem, building new companies, which then build more people with more equity. So it's a very exciting and happy time.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly exciting. Now, if I have a company and I want to impress you, Daniel, I'm sort of asking the same question as previously when we were talking about Canva. You need a great product, you need a great manager, you need great vision. What are the things that you're looking for?
Well, I think the three attributes you've got to solve for in a company, and you think about it as three roles, or sometimes the roles are combined. You've got to think about these three things. You've got to think, what is the product? And that is, what features in this product are you exposing to the public, or the client base, and how do you know those features will stick? How do you know that what you're going to offer is sustainably differentiated enough for you to actually charge for this at some point? So the product definition, the product management is super important. The technology is super important. Who is going to be responsible for developing this product vision into a very beautiful, easy to use product that has high functionality, that is low resource requirements, and they can do this. They can drop code bases or drop versions bug-free, effectively and efficiently. So that's your technology. And then there's the growth person. Well, how are you going to grow the acceptance or the exposure to this product, and who's going to pay for it, and what will they pay for, and how much, and where, and when? So really what you want the founders to have thought through is a little bit of all of those things. Sometimes they haven't worked out the revenue side, but they've worked out the engagement side. So in the Canva place, they thought through what the product was. They thought through deeply how the engineering side, and they thought through the growth in use, and then they had a thesis on revenue. So they had sort of part of the thing solved. But generally speaking, if you were to come to us, I want you to at least thought about that stuff, and also thought about it in the context of what else is happening around the world. Don't come and say, we're the only person in the world doing this if I can do a Google search and find 7 of them.
Yeah.
Be really honest with what you're doing, and not just that you're excited, but you know that customers will be excited for what you're going to bring.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of companies out there which you just think will never make it?
Look, I think it's venture capital is part art, part science, and I think it is arrogant for any venture capital to say, well, they'll never make it, because there's possibility and there's probability, right? There are probably companies which have a lower probability of success, but if those founders want to put their hearts and soul on the line and put their life on hold to do it, then all power to them. We should celebrate them. We do try to, even people we don't invest in, we do try to give founders some positive critique about, we might not be able to help you this time, but here's what we'd be looking at if we were you, or here's what we'd be thinking about.
Yeah. Because
we've seen so many companies, try and give them a bit of insight into the pattern recognition that we see. But again, they might say, well, you're just wrong, AirTree. We're going to go and do this. And good on them, right? I mean, if it's their life, they should have the opportunity to live the life the way they want.
Stay with me, Daniel. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Daniel Petre AO, co-founder and chair of AirTree Ventures. Are there certain sectors, technology is in every sector, so are there certain areas of the economy or the global economy that you prefer over others?
Look, I think not really. Generally speaking, not really, although I'd say we probably avoid hardware because we don't understand hardware. We are software people.
Yep.
At AirTree, many of us have run software companies or run software development teams. Now, having said that, software isn't everything, right? Software isn't every hardware, but we probably don't spend as much time trying to understand how to invest in companies that produce physical products because it's not our expertise. So software, in the software world, we'll look at anything, but again, we were probably a little more concerned in terms of our due diligence on regulated environments. So, health space is highly regulated, so you've got to be very careful when you think about bringing a new health product to market. And financial services or the government regulatory space, you've just got to think more deeply about the responsibilities and the regulations you've got to work around when you're bringing a product to market. But we have invested deep into the financial services sector, deep into the medical software sector. So we've done them all. These require a slightly different lens. We tend to obviously invest mainly in Australia. We tend to invest mainly in early stage. So that would be people who are looking to raise somewhere around sort of $2 to $10 million with the approach of dilution. And they've got some sense of what they want to do with their product and how the initial MVP or minimum viable product is working. But really, it's anything in the software. Anything with software in it, we're involved.
So tell me about a Cloud Guru, because you're in part of that. It's an online learning company, and that's recently been acquired by Pluralsight in the US for about $2 billion.
Yes.
I don't think it existed 5 years ago.
No, it didn't. And look, that was an example of the brothers coming together, Ryan and Sam, and had a brilliant idea. It started off from them just doing it sort of in the back of their bedroom, literally providing training to how to understand how to become proficient on AWS. Now, what that was a great combination was clearly there was a need for cloud training. So that's just a reality. Second thing was they had two major waves sort of coming behind them. One is you've now got three major cloud platforms, AWS, Azure from Microsoft, and GCP from Google. So you had, if you want to be an engineer, you want to understand all three of them, not just one of them. So now you have three platforms to train on, and every platform is launching new services, APIs or program interfaces that you as a developer can interface with. So every year, I think AWS last year launched 130 new APIs on top of AWS.
Wow.
So each one of those will require some degree of training about how to think about using that API. So Sam and Ryan are best in class at producing the training and then laying that across three vectors of platforms and then multiple services on top of those platforms. And so you had this hyper growth. They were the fastest company ever in Australia to get to $10 million ARR run rate revenue. That's faster than anyone, the Atlassians, the Canvas, anyone.
Wow. Daniel, you are a great enthusiast. Anytime I have ever seen you speak or spoken to you, your just natural optimism and enthusiasm always comes through.
That's very kind. Well, I genuinely feel I'm very, very lucky that I've ended up, I'm 62 years old, ended up working for the last, 41 years in technology and mainly surrounded by young, enthusiastic people who want to change the world. And I see that also in my philanthropic work. So I do feel quite blessed that I'm surrounded by people who want to make the world a better place, whether it's by better design tools or by clean water for a remote village in Uganda.
Well, you live that vision and that, you should be really proud of that.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Daniel, thanks for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thanks, Sean. Nice chatting again. Cheers.
That was Daniel Petre AO, co-founder and chair of AirTree Ventures. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join me every morning for the full Fear and Greed podcast with all the business news you need to know. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.